each observable activation pattern is a solution of a set of affine inequalities. If we have a look at the bottom right figure, and if we were to describe the grayish region, the grayish region here, we can describe it with the following set of linear inequalities. And we can do something analogical for the bluish region here. This is a space partition. Every pair of elements in that space partition are disjoint, and the partition covers the whole space. In geometry, an element of this partition is called a polytope, and in machine learning, it's called a linear region. As we deal with binary vectors, which are our activation patterns, we are interested in quantifying the distance between the activation patterns. And the natural candidate to quantify distance, in our case, is the Hamming distance, which measures the number of dissimilar entries between the two vectors of the same length. Note that if we consider a tuple that consists of all the set of possible activation patterns, which are binary vectors of length capital N equal to the number of hidden neurons in our network, and the metric, the Hamming distance, we start dealing with a metric space, which we call the Hamming activation space. And even though this construction is very simple, there are very rapidly some nuances that appear. One of them is that the Hamming activation space contains every activation pattern of the given length. But not every activation pattern is a preimage of a linear region. What it means is, even in the simplest case of three hyperplanes, there is at least one activation pattern which is not realizable. And this, in turn, impacts the definition of convexity in the Hamming space. We know how to define convexity in the continuous input space. And for instance, we may say that a subset of that space is convex if the shortest path between any two points is fully contained in that set. If we were to naively do the same thing in our Hamming activation space, we would run into problems. It turns out that if we are mindful, we can still extend the definition in not so complicated way. And we have to be mindful about the ambiguity of the shortest path if we deal with the Hamming distance. Now, what does it mean? It means that still our simple tessellation, three hyperplanes, if we were to walk from activation pattern pi1 to pi4, there are two shortest paths. One traverses the upper regions and one traverses the lower regions. And it can be thought of traversing the nodes of a high-dimensional hypercube. Which leads me to the definition of the convexity in the Hamming activation space. And we say that subset S of the Hamming cube is convex if for every pair of points, which are our activation patterns, all observable points on every shortest path between the two selected activation patterns are also in that subset. And this definition allows us to establish the lemma of equivalence of convexity notions between the continuous input space and the Hamming activation space. And the lemma is as follows. Given a space partition into regions, into linear regions, which are labeled with respective activation patterns, a union of linear regions is convex in the input space, the continuous input space, if and only if the corresponding set of activation patterns is convex in the Hamming activation space. So far, it's quite simple. It's a bit theoretical construction. I will link it to why does it matter for the ML community. But so far, we have established the convexity in the Hamming activation space, and we have linked it to the convexity in the continuous input space. Now, we are interested in quantifying deviations from convexity. And the idea, which is the first idea we had in constructing our measure, is a very simple one. Consider the set of points, to a pair of points in the input space and linearly interpolate between them. In some sense, the straight line in the input space is the smallest convex set that we can have in the input space. We then map the straight line from the continuous input space to the Hamming activation space. And by such a mapping, we obtain the sequence of activation patterns. What we observe is that while here, walking from the initial point towards the end point, the metric, the Euclidean distance, increases monotonically along such a walk, it is not the case in case of the mapped activation regions. Which means that not every shortest path between the two edge activation regions contains the obtained activation patterns. Which means that the sequence of activation patterns is not convex in the sense of the definition 2. Which then means that we can measure deviations from convexity between the 2 points x1 and x2. All right. We have connection to convexity. The next intuition we had is the geometrical folding of the space. Here we have along the x1, x2, we have the monotonical behavior of the distance. In the Hamming activation space, the gray arrows, we observe the breaks in the monotonicity when we walk from the initial pattern to the other pattern. That means that there is a behavior like that. The Hamming distance with respect to the initial point may decrease, may increase, denoted by gray circles. In which case is it possible? Or in other sense, what must be the arrangement of the linear regions so that it actually happens? And it is possible if we have the arrangements like that. We have some sort of the dense structure. Or in other words, we have the activation patterns, the linear regions, the gray marked with gray, pi 1 and pi a and pi k, which are closer to each other in the Hamming distance than any of them is to the intermediate activation, the linear region pi j. Now, it is possible in the Hamming activation space. What would be the equivalent in the continuous space? And the equivalent can be thought of as the physical folding of the plane our data is located in. So this is the intuition behind the folding measure. How do we actually construct it mathematically? And in this case, we resort to two range measures, R1 and R2. The first range measure measures the maximum change in the Hamming distance at each step with respect to the initial pattern, and is given by R1 of gamma, gamma is our path, equal to the maximum change in the Hamming distance with respect to the first activation pattern. The second measure, the second range measure that we use is the total travel distance on the hypercube, which is the R2 of gamma sum of the Hamming distance of adjacent activation patterns. We then define the local folding between the 2 points x1, x2 as the ratio of the two range measures subtracted from 1. And we may define the global folding as some statistics of the local values. Our measure is provably lower and upper bounded. It's equal to 0 if the distance in the Hamming distance with respect to the initial pattern increases monotonically, and it's equal to 1 if we happen to be on a looped path. That is, the first range measure is upper bounded, and the second one diverges to infinity. We have the following properties. We have stability. Multiple steps in the same linear region do not influence the values of the measure. We have asymmetry. That is, the folding measure is sensitive to the direction of path traversal. And while it is direction sensitive, it is flat invariance. That is, if in one direction the measure is equal to 0, it's also equal to 0 in the opposite direction. And in general case, it's neither sub nor super additive. The computation of the current form that we have so far seen is computationally heavy. in the experiments we have performed, it turns out that while there are some aspects which we cannot reduce the complexity of, we can, in case of the classification task, and if we know the classes that we want to compute the measures between, we can downsample it to the 1%, and the measure still exhibits a very robust behavior with respect to non-subsampled cases. So far, we have considered our activation patterns as the, in essence, pre-match of the activation function. We had a pre-match of -infinity to 0, which we denoted by 0, and a pre-match of 0 to infinity, which we denoted by 1. Now, the good question is there anything special around 0, which is the default choice in this kind of work? When people deal with linear regions, there's always thresholding at 0. And the reason for thresholding at 0 is that, at least in case of the ReLU function, it turns out to be more informative choice than any other choice. And to see that, let's consider two different thresholds, A, B, in the range of the activation function, doesn't have to be ReLU, such that the absolute value of A is smaller than the absolute value of B. If this is the case, then the tessellation, the number of linear regions induced when using A as a threshold, is greater or equal number of linear regions induced when using B as a threshold, which then implies that the folding measurements of alpha of A tessellation is greater or equal than the folding measurements when using B as a threshold. And in the case, for the ReLU function, it strictly implies that putting A equal to 0 is more informative in sense of the folding measure and in sense of the linear regions, the number of linear regions induced, than any other B strictly positive. We can extend the computation to any other activation function. ReLU serves to establish an intuition. In case of the ReLU function, we compute the measure as a walk traversing linear regions. In the general case, we can think of it as the walk traversing different equivalence classes. When we say that the inputs are equivalent, if the Hamming distance of the respective activation patterns is equal to 0. The equivalence classes, in case of the ReLU function, correspond to linear regions. If we were to use a non-monotonous activation function, it may be that the equivalence classes are topologically disconnected, but the construction still applies as is. What if we have the same output function, yet very different representation? And we have studied this question. We have manually constructed a linear network with analytically the same decision boundary, which is drastically different in terms of representation. One family may be linear in terms of number of neurons growing in the function of number of layers, and the other may be exponential. And what we have consistently seen is that we have higher folding values for less Kolmogorov complex representation. Which leads me to perhaps the takeaway message of this presentation. And if we were to ask a question, given a space folding value for some path gamma, what can we learn? And we propose to see the folding values as the feature of our of the network. And we have seen that the measure is upper and lower bounded, which means it can serve as a reference point across neural networks. And our interpretation is as follows. Higher values of the measure indicate a more compact representation, and lower values indicate a potential architectural improvements for the task. So that would be the big picture of what I wanted to share with you, and I'm happy to take any questions. May you have some.